Hello, it's me again. I bet you had thought I had given up on this project because it's been 3 months. Truth of the matter is, I almost did give up on this project. I got stymied by a lot of very small things because I was intimidated by the overall very large thing. And so I really just didn't do a lot over the summer, which was ironically the prime time I would have had to get it done. So I'm back. It's exciting. We are picking up with making the Fabric Toile, I believe is how that's pronounced. And admittedly, this will be the third one I have done because I had a friend come over and help me do the first one who was not comfortable being shown on camera. So we did go through the whole process as I tried to figure out how to not show her on camera, and then decided that I needed to put on my big kid pants and use my duct tape dress form that I had made of myself. And that was one of the things that I kind of got stuck on this summer, was how to fill it out. So I'm going to show you how I ended up doing that, just in case it's relevant for somebody. So as you recall, the last video I did was me making my duct tape dress form. What I ended up doing was I inserted a hanger in it and I filled the core with spray insulation, and you can kind of see right there. Now I will tell you the thing that I did not anticipate with the spray insulation was that as it expanded it would change shape. But what I discovered happily was that if I put my hand up and kind of scooched it away from the perimeter of the t-shirt that's on the inside, it pulled away very, very neatly. So what I ended up with after I had pulled the t-shirt away from the insulation and I had my husband like muscle it a little bit to kind of break it up. It got side to side more than I really wanted it to. I had space around the inside. So the first instruction is to measure the body from the point where the shoulder joins the neck, which on my knee is kind of right here, and measure down to it approximately 1 inch below the waist. So for me, that is 17 inches, but I actually gave myself 18 inches because towards the end, you're gonna like kind of match up that waist anyway. So I just gave myself a little extra wiggle room in that. So it says to start below the waist and pin the muslin to the corset. The cool thing about my duct tape self is that I can stick pins straight into it. It does make my pins a little bit sticky, but I found if I just soak them in a little nail polish remover and then just wipe them down, it comes right off and they're perfectly clean and usable again. So I love that feature that I can just stick things straight to my duct tape self, and it's perfect. So I'm going to start by pinning 1 inch below the waist, and then keeping it smooth, I'm going to pin straight up the center. Okay, so I've got her pinned straight up the center here, starting about the inch below my waist. And you can see I've got a little bit here on top, but that's going to come off later anyway. So after that step, you smooth the fabric upward towards the neck with a pencil or a pen. Mark the base of the throat at the hollow of the collarbones. So I have my trusty, I don't know, sewing pencil. I don't know what you call this, to be honest. So smooth the fabric from the center of the body outward and upward towards the shoulders. You'll notice the fabric does not lay smoothly. You shall begin to find the neck curve. Begin at the center front, working carefully. Use scissors to cut from the fabric edge towards the base of the neck. So the first time we did this, we did that where we cut into the base of the neck. We found that it actually really kind of makes its own like straight connected line, which I was really surprised. I kind of thought we'd have a little bit more jagged. So the second time I did this, I did that where I cut in and then connected the dots. This time I'm going to draw where I think the neckline is on the mannequin and then cut into from there. Above the chemise, smooth the fabric towards the neckline. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a part. That's the back piece. Cut only as far as needed to relieve the tension on the fabric, creating a smooth line at the base of the neck. And if you don't draw the line first, it really will make a pretty smooth line. It's kind of amazing. Trim away the long pieces as needed. Mark the base of each cut, and you will refine the neckline when the fabric is laid flat again. So don't panic if it's not perfectly straight. Because like a lot of the things that you think, oh my gosh, I should clean this now, you'll end up cleaning it later. So just don't worry about it. Mine's not quite an inch behind the earlobe in the back, but it's like 3/4 of an inch. So we are going to move to the back. The back process starts very similarly, where you begin about 1 inch below the waistline, pin the selvage edge of the fabric to the center of the corset, smooth upwards toward the neckline. It does say the back piece will sit higher than the front. It definitely does, so don't panic. And it says to connect the back piece to the front piece. Oh, sorry. And then you just connect it kind of along where like a contemporary shoulder seam would be, because again, you're gonna like the seam is gonna move later on in the process anyway. Right now, it's just to kind of get the two pieces like to create that picture. And then it says to smooth the fabric up the neckline, the back will sit higher than the front. Snip into the fabric to relieve the curve, then mark along the base of the neck. The neckline should sit smoothly at the base of the neck, neither gapping nor creeping. So once again, I'm going to draw that in, and then I'm going to cut into it. But if you cut to just relieve the tension, you will find that it really does create a surprisingly smooth connected line. Cut away the long pieces as needed. Pin the front and back together with a natural shoulder line. The period shoulder seams will be marked later. As you pin, smooth the fabric with your hand upward and outward. You're going to do a lot of smoothing upward and outward. Do not pull the fabric taut. Definitely don't do that. I did that the first time. It's very weird. Let it lie gently on the body. Mark the point of the shoulder and the armpit crease. Repeat with the upper chest and back. And in this, it's nice because they kind of give you an idea of like where that line is going to be. The illustrations are really very helpful in this example. So I am now kind of marking the point of the shoulder and the armpit crease on my me. All right, if there is excess fabric in the arm side area, leave it for the moment. It can be removed during the placement of shoulder seams in most cases. In my experience, case number 3, yes. The bust presents a critical fitting area. I don't know if you can tell on my me, but bust is something that I do deal with all of the time. So this is definitely one of those parts that like I tried to do very intentionally because I know how I need it to fit comfortably for me. Smooth the fabric over the bust and mark along the underarm beginning at the armpit crease. Use scissors to cut into the fabric, leaving the curve with the neck. The first time I did this, I feel like I cut it a little bit too square, so I'm hoping not to repeat that. But that was when I was relieving the tension, I went in so far that it ended up creating almost a right angle, which I don't think is correct. So here we go. So it talks about the fabric like poofing right here, like not settling. I don't seem to have that problem, which is strange, but it says not to worry about it because like as you it'll just kind of resolve itself. You don't have to worry about it being that poofy. It seems to settle pretty well. Okay, so here's the part where we like cut off all this extra fabric. And this is another part where it got weird for me the first time I did it. I think I know what I did wrong, but when I laid the toile out flat to like look at it again, if I use the one I made last time for my paper pattern, I'm definitely gonna have to make some adjustments in this area. Yeah, there's a little poofing right there. Got a little poof there. That's okay. I'm gonna save this up on top. Last time I cut it off and I ended up wishing that I had not. So all this extra that I have up here, this like wing, I'm just gonna tuck it in and save it for later, just in case I decide that I want it when I move that shoulder seam back a ways. Because remember, this isn't your final shoulder seam. This is just like the temporary holding shoulder seam. So I found out pretty quickly that I wanted that extra, inch and a half of fabric to have that wiggle room for that period appropriate, the backward shoulder seam. This is where my pages have started falling out because I've read this chapter so many times, like so many times, that my pages are falling out. Okay, so we've got it fairly comfortable. We definitely have ourselves a pinning allowance. Tear firmly to, I did not tear firmly. Pin the back and the front bodice together along the sides. Proper side seam placement will be marked later, which is another reason why I left all of this, because I knew that I would need that for the proper seam. So I just went ahead and left it. Okay, so darts. I am not the proper person to talk to about darts. I understand darts. I get how they work. I think I did them right the first time. It fit okay. It says the darts radiate from the center of the body on most period adult pieces, and there are 2 darts on either side of the front bodice. For me personally, I discovered it had to be 2 because I didn't have enough fabric to do more than 2. Like they would have been so tiny. It really just would have been sort of agonizing. So measure along the fabric approximately 3 inches from the center and begin to lightly pin the inner dart, taking up about half of the excess fabric from the waist and tapering to the bust. So I'm going to do this one, and then I am also going to do the second dart as well. It does talk about dart legs. I discovered that when I took the toile off and had marked my darts, the legs were naturally more curved than they were straight, which I found really interesting, and like it's just another really good example of like the period sewing is that way for a reason, because I don't know, because it's that way for a reason, because when I had straightened it out and then was marking them in, they were naturally curved. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and do both of my darts right now. So the thing I seem to have trouble managing is my first dart is always much bigger than my second. And I haven't really figured out a great way to solve that problem yet. So people who have made more darts in their life than I have, I'm up to a grand life total of like 6. So if you've made more darts and you have helpful hints, that would be awesome. Comment about how to better make darts, because I'm sure I'm not the only person that could benefit from that conversation. So I have my 2 darts here. Right. Oh, I keep missing. There we go. I have my 2 darts. All right, it says base the dart position with pins, molding the fabric smoothly to the torso. Dart shape is another aspect of pattern making where draping can excel. Yes, yes. You may notice that it talks about the dart legs, arched versus straight. So now we're working on the arm side curve. Drops over the crest of the shoulder to appear nearly horizontal during wear. So what I learned on my second attempt at making this is I felt like I had put those shoulders really far down. And then when I kind of got everything finished and I put it back on my mannequin, they were much higher than I thought they were. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and put them much further down than I think they should be, with the idea that then when everything is said and done, they will actually fall where I think they should fall. But that nearly horizontal thing, I thought I had gotten horizontal and I just did not. So my mannequin, I followed the instructions and I made it standing like this. So when it says fists placed on hips, that's where my fists were when the mannequin was made. So in theory, that's the position I am currently standing in. All right, so we are going to mark where those go and then mark a pleasing line for the arm side to the armpit crease. A good general measure for the amount of drop is the width of one hand below the point of the shoulder. Okay, it says there is not any rule where the drop should sit. You can drop or rise the shoulder line as needed. So the ideal emphasizes the smooth sloping shoulders, created in part by the angled seam that begins just below the earlobe at the neck and the angles down and back. And again, there is a very helpful illustration here. Without this illustration, all of this would be lost on me. So it just kind of shows where all that is. I went through and then did this picture on the back of my second go around on this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. All right, the back seams. I love that that's air quoted. The ideal shape is further created with the curved side seams on the back. This appears to be a curved and top stitched tuck rather than actual seam, which was helpful because when I was thinking about how I was going to pattern this, I was thinking I would have to cut out each individual slice of this and then sew it back together. But no, it turns out curved and top stitched, which kind of makes sense because making a whole extra pattern piece it's just a lot. So it looks like it's 3 pieces. Clever. All right, mark 1 inch to the side of the center back, mark 1 inch down the arm side from the shoulder seam placement. Connect these 2 marks with a smooth curve. Measuring tape. All right, so I'm moving the side seam back. It says about 1 inch. This is why I left all that extra fabric, because I am cutting it close on that 1 inch thing. Now I have the poof, and the poof is bothering me greatly. So as far as marking the position of the waistline, that's why I gave myself a little bit extra, because the last time I did this, when I cut it off, when I cut off the extra and then I put it back on me, it then was a little bit too short. So I'm going to mark the waist, but I'm not going to trim the excess fabric off this time. It says you may notice that the line is very curvy. It's interesting when you see like where your waist actually is, how your waist wraps around you. That kind of blew my mind. By drawing the waistline in its exact location, the waist will sit properly and smoothly, which I will say it does. Do not extend the waist down onto the hip. Your brain wants, my brain can't comprehend how like small this actually is from here to here. Like when I see the fabric laid out, I'm like, surely that's not it. So your brain like wants to make it bigger, but it's really, really not. Like, put it where your waist is. It'll blow your mind, but put it where your waist is. As with fitting the curves of the neck and the underarm, snip the fabric at the waist to relieve the curve. I discovered that I don't really, like, this might be the place where I would want to do that, but I snipped the fabric and I snipped all the fabric and then I regretted having snipped the fabric. So unless it's like really, really not laying flat and you have to relieve that tension, I'm just going to leave this on here for now. All right, so from toile to pattern. It says, I had to remind myself before I cut to leave myself seam allowances. I didn't do that very well last time. I left myself a little bit of seam allowance, but then when I did all the things and kind of put it back on, I realized that I was going to need more seam allowance. So the seam allowance I left myself is actually going to be part of the pattern, and then I'm going to leave a little extra around that seam allowance. So mark the pins for the darts. Definitely mark your darts, because if you unfold it and it's gone, then you just have to go through this whole process some more. Mark along the fold lines of the darts. Do not remove the pins. If you've pinned out fullness in the arm side, cut the arm side placement line, leaving the folds of fabric pinned. So like your brain wants to take out all the pins, don't take out all the pins. So it says to lay each piece on a fresh piece of muslin, carefully pinning the center front. So I'm not going to go through this whole process with you, because this part was the part that made sense to me. But I mean, of course, like I ironed everything that way it was laying flat. Add the seam allowances, cut out the second 12, baste the darts, and then pin close to the center line, leaving, this will be 1 inch from the selvage edge. Make small adjustments as needed. So I'm going to show you the second one that I did, that I took all the way through to this step. So here's my darts that I basted in. I went ahead and made both sides because I really have trust issues with my sewing. So I went ahead and made both sides. So here's my other darts basted in. I moved the side seam back a little bit. I really just tried to make it kind of look like the picture. There's a really nice, like when you lay it out, this is kind of what it should look like. So I did that. And like I said, what I discovered is my seam allowances that I left myself were not very good. So definitely gonna have to leave myself some better seam allowances. I went ahead and basted the back 2 pieces together to create that kind of final shape. So yeah, so this was I moved it onto a fresh piece of muslin, and I did all of the things and ended up with this. And this is what my mannequin was wearing at the beginning. And like I said, what the things that I did that I would do differently is leave myself more at the top. So when I push that shoulder seam back, I do actually have that fabric enough to do it. And then same thing with the side seams. I cut them off, and then I realized I needed that fabric. Also, my waist is like, if I would sew it to something, it actually would end up being about a 1/2 inch higher than my waist, which again is not what we're trying to do. So leaving myself a little extra at the bottom, and then you can always take it off later. I mean, if it's in your way, and then you've kind of got everything set where you need it. But I'm going to switch. I'm going to take this one off, and I'm going to put this one on. So as you can see, here's where I gave myself my seam allowance. So this is my seam allowance, but it's like not quite on my waist anymore. So that's why I left all that fabric at the end. I mean, you can see, here's where I left my seam allowance for my neckline, which I think is okay. This side ended up a little bit funny. Like you can see, it's very high up. But if I turn it over, it's still a little high up. So like there's that. Not really sure what, I've got this still going on here. Like it fits smoothly over the top. It like, you know, it's gonna fit over my bust okay, but I don't know particularly what's going on here. Like, I don't know if maybe my dart is too high, or like, I just don't really know. Or maybe it's supposed to look like this and I just don't remember that it's supposed to look like this. I mean, it fits pretty well. I can get it over my arms. Like this isn't as low as I really thought it should be. So I made the other one. Here you can see I put where I thought it should be, and then there's my seam allowance. So I put the other one like significantly lower. So we'll see how that turns out. Sorry about my thumb. So this is my second one. I'll go through this process with my third one and kind of see how it went. I'm not unhappy with how it turned out. Definitely glad I did it a couple of times. It is a fabric toile. So my final thoughts on making this fabric toile is at the end of all of this, there's a section about using saran wrap and just lots and lots of layers of saran wrap to kind of make it work. I haven't done the saran wrap method. I have a very sneaky suspicion it's much, much, much faster. So I probably am gonna try that when I'm done here. I forgot to wash the muslin before I used it. I realized halfway through. So there's that to contend with. I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's coming out okay. So I'm gonna keep working through the next step, the next part of the process, making the paper patterns, and I definitely am gonna sew a fake one, not a fake one, but like a practice one after this. And I hope that this video helped somebody who's like me that really isn't entirely sure but has most of an idea, so they're going to give it a try and see how it turns out. Yeah, and for the people who do this regularly and have done this a million times, I would like to sincerely apologize for any just gross mistakes that I probably made at least one of. Feel free, I'm sure, like I said, I'm not the only person who would benefit from like, hey, I've done it this way and I can tell you this is a lot easier. Or, hey, I saw that you did this and maybe try it this way in the future. Would be very beneficial to me and anybody else who is that visual learner who needs to see it done. Sorry this video is so long. I even ran parts of it in fast motion and cut parts of it out. So if you're still here, wow, thank you. And that's it. There will be another video. I don't know when. School started again, so I'm pretty much down to Sundays for sewing. And that's all I have for you. I will see you again in the future. Bye.